Welcome back to Grid Drop. Today we're doing a full review of the 2023 F1 season. In this video we'll be covering my overall impressions and opinions on the season. As for the drivers and teams, instead of ranking them in a tier list like I did in my mid-season review, we're going to give out some awards. I know that sounds stupid, but hear me out. These titles will be placed with the team or drivers that deserve them. These awards consist of Unsung Hero, Most Impressive, Least Impressive, Biggest Flop, Least Potential, and plenty more, but you'll have to watch to find out. Before we get into it, I just want to say thank you for all of the support lately. The channel has been growing super fast, and it's amazing to see how many of you enjoy the videos I put out. I really appreciate it. That being said, let's get into the video. This season has honestly been okay. Obviously, us fans were spoiled by the action in 2021, and the beginning of 2022 had a pretty intense title fight until Verstappen completely destroyed everyone. This year, we've had some pretty amazing racing, and we even had a brief glimpse at a title fight between Verstappen and his teammate Sergio Perez, but who are we kidding? I don't really think I was ever buying into that one. Ever since that brief glimpse of a more entertaining season, we've seen Verstappen win again, and again, and again, and again, and again. Now, regardless of if you like Verstappen or absolutely hate him, you can't deny the absolute show he's put on this year. We literally watched multiple long-standing records be broken and saw the development of arguably the most dominant car in Formula 1 history, which I think is pretty spectacular. Even if you hate him, Verstappen definitely rose to his full potential this year, and it's been amazing to see. The gap between Verstappen is almost more than Ferrari and McLaren combined, which is just insane. On that note, Red Bull has obviously dominated as well, and the RB19 is an Adrian Newey masterpiece. However, some other teams have excelled as well. Aston Martin showed incredible promise at the beginning of the season, and it seemed like it was just a matter of time before Fernando Alonso returned to the top step of the podium. However, the underdevelopment of their car hindered their progress, and they slowly dropped behind the likes of Mercedes, Ferrari, and surprisingly, McLaren. At the beginning of the season, McLaren had the big orange tractor. However, out of nowhere, they got it together and developed an insanely quick package. Granted, their car seems to be hit or miss depending on the track, but it's been completely nuts to watch McLaren rise from the very back of the grid to the podium places. On that note, Piastri and Lando have been on fire lately. Yes, there's been a few mistakes here and there, but overall, these guys are helping McLaren reach the top. On the other hand, Ferrari has a different story. As for the drivers, Leclerc has had his ups and downs this season with some great results and some major bad luck, but most of his mistakes were pretty much beyond his control. Sainz had a spectacular win in Singapore, but also had his ups and downs. Overall, Ferrari still has team issues. The strategy kind of got better. Last year was an absolute joke with the strategists, and they've definitely had their fair share of mistakes this year. Overall, it's barely better than last year, but I do think they improved. Mercedes seemed to make big steps forward this year as well. Yes, I know the W13 is abysmal and neither driver enjoy racing in it, but they've shown a very strong work ethic in order to keep developing the car throughout the season in order to maximize points, rather than saving time and money for the development of next year's car. As for the other teams, I haven't really been too impressed. I'm always rooting for the underdogs, and there's definitely been some highlights. I love seeing Williams in the points, and Daniel Ricciardo's qualifying result in Mexico. It showcases the potential of these drivers on these backmarker teams. However, one team seems to always be in limbo, and that's Alpine. They've boasted some good results this year, especially Ocon's podium in Monaco and Gasly's podium in the Netherlands, but other than those results, the Alpines have really seemed to struggle. They've had double DNFs, incidents with other drivers, and overall poor pace. Alpine has definitely been a lackluster team this year. Now, obviously there are multiple driver champions on the grid, but I think there are more drivers with potential to be champion one day. Firstly, we have the obvious choice, Charles Leclerc. In a more reliable car with better strategists, it's arguable that he might have won in 2022, so he definitely deserves a place on this list. Along with Charles, we have Lando Norris. Although he's yet to achieve a race win, he definitely has shown some masterful racing this year, alongside his teammate Oscar Piastri. I know it's a bit early on to say this given his rookie status, but Piastri has been absolutely fantastic this year, and he definitely has more potential to get even better. George Russell hasn't had the best season, but I think with Hamilton retired and George the number one driver at Mercedes, he has a good shot at the title when the car gets better, which is inevitable. As for the other drivers, I don't really see too much potential. Whether that be a question of age, where they are in their career, the limited spots on top teams, or just an overall lack of skill. However, enough about my basic impressions, let's get into the good stuff. Here's a list of the titles we're going to award to each driver, and let me know in the comments your opinions on these placements. First, we'll start off with the Unsung Hero. There were a lot of drivers that were pretty impressive this year, so for this one, I've actually gone with a tie. On one hand, Oscar Piastri had a stellar rookie year. Of course, at the beginning of the season, his results weren't there, And looking at his race results, it's filled with highs and lows. However, the most impressive thing about Piastri so far is his confidence under pressure. In many scenarios this season, Piastri had to defend from exceptional drivers, and as a rookie in Formula 1, he went far beyond my expectations in doing so. On top of this, his larger point hauls have definitely helped McLaren in their surge through the standings. On the other hand, and hear me out, Lewis Hamilton deserves this title as well. Yes, I know he's a 7-time world champion and the bar is very high. However, I think he's outdrove the Mercedes almost every single race this season. The W13 has improved over the course of the season, but to be third in the standings is undoubtedly impressive, as Mercedes isn't necessarily a slam dunk for the second fastest car. Hamilton has definitely showed up this season. I'm going to get all of my hot takes out of the way now, so let's get to most improved. Alright, this sounds dumb, but in my opinion, the most improved is Fernando Alonso. Yes, I know he's a 2-time world champion and an incredible driver. However, this season has been a complete turnaround from the last few years. If Alonso announced his retirement at the end of last year, I wouldn't have been too shocked. Yes, he's still a high-caliber driver, but it seemed like all the issues at Alpine caused that fire inside Alonso to sort of die down. However, this season that fire came back. His battles at the beginning of the season were incredible, and it was clear he was pushing beyond the car's performance to get as close to a win as he could. Unfortunately, the Aston Martin's development has slacked off a bit, but man, this guy is still fighting hard. It's not the most conventional definition of most improved, but Fernando Alonso has completely turned his season around, and probably still has a couple of really good years left in him. Now, let's move on to the drivers with the most potential and the least potential. Now, I've kind of already said this, but I think for this category, the obvious choice is Piastri. With such a solid rookie season and being as young as he is, and already at a higher team like McLaren, this guy definitely has a big future ahead of him. I could rehash all the stuff I said before, but there's no point in that. Piastri definitely has the most potential on the grid. Now, I don't think this will come as a surprise, but I think Lance Stroll has the least potential of any drivers. Although he's semi-consistent, his results are still much lower than his teammates. I know that Aston Martin's development has slacked off, but that's not an excuse. It seems like Lance has already given up, and is just fully embracing being a nepotism hire that doesn't necessarily deserve a seat in F1. It seems like all he does is complain when Alonso is outdriving the car almost every time he gets in it. I can't see him leaving Aston Martin because no other team will want him. On top of this, Aston had a great run this season, and Lance didn't show up, proving that he definitely needs to be replaced. I think Lance Stroll has the least potential of any driver on the grid. Speaking of disappointments, let's consider the biggest flop of the season. In my mind, undoubtedly the deserving driver of this title is Sergio Perez. Yeah, Checo has had some amazing races where he worked his way up the field and onto the podium, however, he would do so starting in like 15th. His qualifying results have been absolutely horrendous. On top of this, he's made mistakes in a lot of races, and those mistakes are pretty much a result of having to pass 10 cars to get higher up the order. I don't have that much to say for Perez. I think his performances speak for themselves. He's definitely cutting it close to getting fired, and it might honestly be too late for Checo. Oh, I forgot to mention, all of these bad performances and mistakes happened while he was in the best car on the grid. I know, the car is catered to Verstappen and doesn't suit Checo's driving style, but it's hard to watch a Red Bull miss Q3 when his teammate is winning 10 races in a row. Speaking of Red Bull, the next award goes to the biggest surprise on the grid. For this, I think I have to go with Danny Ric. I was definitely not expecting to see him on the grid in 2023, and as a fan of the Australian,
Sweat.
I was pleasantly surprised. Yeah, I know his results haven't been fantastic, but he's been driving one of the 2 worst cars on the grid on top of a year away from racing. His qualifying performance in Mexico was definitely impressive, and he held on to most of those places in the race. I really hope we see a return of the Honey Badger, and he gets a contract with a better team soon. Danny Ric is definitely the biggest surprise of the season. Well, seeing as we just went over Daniel Ricciardo's return, let's take a look at the worst of the worst award. It's Nick de Vries. All he did was make mistakes, crash, and get poor results. Definitely a talented driver, and he has potential, but this little stretch in Formula 1 was a pretty rough look. That's kinda all that needs to be said. On that note, let's go over the least impressive driver. For this one, I think I have to go with Logan Sargeant. As an American, I had high hopes going into the season, but unfortunately, Logan Sargeant really hasn't achieved much. I know he's a rookie in a Williams, so it's hard to judge, and his teammate has much more experience, but there still isn't really anything impressive about Sargeant this season. He's had a moment or two where he showcased some good racing, but overall he just hasn't been much to write home about. I'd like to see Sargeant improve in F1, but who knows what Williams will do with him in the future. Logan Sargent has definitely been the least impressive driver this season. As for the most impressive, we have Max Verstappen. As I said at the beginning of the video, watching his progress and results this year has been crazy. We've witnessed a historical season, and that's all because of Supermax. He's wiped the floor with everyone this season, and watching him race, well, we don't normally see him on the broadcast, but seeing his results has been fantastic. I am a bit of a Max fan, so granted I'm a little biased, but man, this guy is undeniably something special. Without a doubt, Max has been the most impressive driver of the year. For the final category, we have the best of the field, and for this one I also put it to a tie between Verstappen and Red Bull. As I just said, Max has been on fire this year, and undoubtedly the most impressive driver. However, he couldn't do that without a strong team behind him. Red Bull have been on top of everything this year. The car is a masterpiece, the pit stops are on point, the strategy is bang on, and much more. Red Bull has been a complete force this year, and they are absolutely deserving of the Constructors' title. The combination of a driver like Max and a team like Red Bull have definitely proven to be the best of the best this year. Overall, each driver and team has a right to each of these awards, but these are just my personal opinions. Let me know in the comments what you think of these rankings, and if you disagree with them, who would you choose instead? I think the season has been a decent one, and I'm very excited to see how things change up before 2024 begins. That being said, again, thanks for the support lately, it's been amazing, and feel free to join my Discord, which is linked in the description. So if you made it this far, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.